So in this video, we're going to build on the Django template language. I'm going to show you exactly how to do the implementation, and that is how to introduce templates into your project. Let me show you the beginning page here. This is what it's going to look like when we're finished. This is the home page for the company, the company home page, the root address. And you'll notice I have added a main menu to the main page. Although we're not really doing anything with it at this point, it is all static HTML, and I'll show that to you in just a minute. But that's just to illustrate the point. We're going to build on this in a future video. Let's go to the HR home page, and if you do that, you will see, well, let's get it right here, /HR. There we go. And there's our HR homepage, and it lists the employees on the homepage. Again, this is dynamic because this list is generated from the database, and this is an unordered list. We're going to again build on this in a future video. And then the last thing I want to show you is the product homepage. And the product homepage shows you the products, but it also does the customization that I showed you, and that is if an item has 0 quantity, it prints it as out of stock. It doesn't print 0, it prints out of stock. We can also, by the way, build on this. You'll notice that fountain pen is the first item. It also has an ID of 1. That is our product ID. If I put in 1 here, it prints it out in a little bit of a different format, in a table format, and it prints all the information, including the category and what category the pen is. This is dynamic because as I change the number, you'll notice that now I have an executive rollerball, although especially misspelled rollerball apparently. But you'll see that the quantity on hand is 2. I did not change that in this particular template, but we could easily do that using the same approach in the other that we used in the main page. So let's take a look how to do this. Let's go over to code, and the first thing I want to show you is I want to review the main urls.py. Again, this is very important because this is what does all the delegations. We have 3 apps. And the apps all have to be delegated in the main urls.py. The home file, if somebody types in, for an example, an address of www.server.com, then it's going to delegate. That's the pattern is there is an empty pattern. It's going to forward it to the home.urls. If somebody types in www.server.com/HR/, it will forward it to HR, and www.server.com/product/, it'll forward it to the product URLs. So you'll notice this, it's kept this very neat, very clean. We don't have a lot going on here. But what it also allows us to do is in each of these apps, each of those apps, of course, are going to handle the URLs beyond that pattern. So it really does keep things very neat and tidy. Let's go over to the home section, and the home page is actually pretty simple. So if we go to the urls.py, again, the pattern after the root is going to be again empty because there's nothing after www.server.com, so it again is empty, and it's going to forward it to the views called home, and we gave it a name home, and the name here is go home. So let's go over to the views in the home app, and you'll see again very simple. It's a static URL page, so there's nothing getting passed. There's no data, nothing. All we need to do is forward the request to the correct template. You also notice that the render argument here, the regular render method, has only 2 arguments, request. It does not have the data argument. You can use render with 2 arguments or 3. If you're not passing any data, then you just use this approach and it just passes it and forwards it on to the correct template. Now, templates. There's been a lot of overhead and a lot of configuration that we've had to do with these added applications, and it seems like it may be kind of overly tedious, but we're going to get a payoff now. Django wants you to use added applications. It doesn't want you to do everything up in the main area and just throw everything in there. So one of the benefits of this is that templates are largely now easy to use. And some of the other stuff we're going to do later is going to be much easier to use. The approach you must use is creating a templates folder inside the added app. It is important that you use templates and you spell it correctly. I do this myself sometimes. I misspell the word templates. My fingers get going too fast. Double check. Make sure that as you type that new folder in, it is called templates. You'll notice that the templates is under the home folder here. Okay. Each added application is going to have its own templates folder, and that will allow it to handle the templates that are relevant to that particular added application. Then in there I put home.html, and you'll notice that that's where I forward it to. Okay, it can find home.html. We don't have to put any paths or any kind of crazy configuration or whatever. It does it automatically. Now, as a side note, I'm going to show this to you. You don't really need to know this, but it is probably a good thing to understand. If I go over to the main settings file and I go down to the templates area here, you'll see this thing called appders. And that's what is allowing us to do a lot of this stuff automatically. Django will by default look in the applications that we've added for a directory called templates and will find them automatically. So that setting is what's buying us some additional simplicity. Okay, now that we've got all this configuration out of the way, we can reap the benefits. So that's how we did the home page. If you look at the actual template, again, very simple, no Django template language stuff, just a static HTML page. We will fix this in a subsequent video and add some additional links and things to it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so that's the home app. Let's go over now to the HR app. And again, same format. You'll notice I added a templates folder, and in there is the template. The request comes in, www.myserver.com/HR. We're going to capture the empty pattern because this is the HR homepage, so there's nothing after the HR/. It again goes to go home, which I like to use because that is the home page, and we haven't given it a new name so there isn't any conflict in the names. If I go over now to the views, you'll see the go home goes out to the employees table, pulls in all the employees. I do print this so that I can see it as I normally do. I load up a data dictionary. I use the keyword. In an earlier video, I used emps to illustrate that this name has to be the same as the one out in the template. But you can use whatever name you want to. It's just that whatever you use here, it must be in the template, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then I use the return render, and I forward it to hrhome.html. If you look in the folder here, in the templates folder, this is my folder template. I did use doc type here. I forgot to do that in the earlier one. Don't worry about this. We'll talk about this later. And then you'll notice this is consistent with the format that we did in the Django template language. I forwarded on employees. If you remember in the views, I used employees here. So I have to use employees in the loop right there. For each employee in employees, I print out the employee's first name and last name. And again, I have an end for, very important. You will get an error if you don't do that. So that's how I did the HR homepage. Finally, the product page is a little more complicated in the sense that we've added a little bit more detail to it. Again, templates folder, very important. If I go to the URLs, there are two patterns here. The first one is, what if I type in www.server.com/product/1, which is the product number. So that's going to pass as a parameter. So that's one pattern that I've entered, along with the root, which is of course the home page for the product. And I've called this product and product home. If you look to the views, then I should have two. That is get product and get products. Okay, which makes sense. And if you look here, the get product gets a single product based on the product ID, and then it loads up the data, the dictionary, forwards it onto product.html. The get products method gets all the products, okay, and again loads up the data dictionary, forwards it on. You'll notice that this is pretty much the same approach. You're going to use this approach over and over again with Django. Very, very similar approach that you're going to use when you're hitting a database. But you also notice how relatively simple the code is, which is one of the reasons I really like Django. So let's take a look at the code. For the product table, this is what forwards on a single product. Single product. Okay, so let's go to the product. For the product page, you'll notice that I used a table structure, and I know students are often intimidated by tables, but they're really not that hard once you get the hang of it. First of all, the table has to be delimited by opening tag and a closing tag. I went through this in the DTL video, and you'll notice that each row opens and closes. So I have an opening TR, which is the row, opening and closing, opening and closing. So this is a row, and this is a row, and this is a row, and this is a row. So there are 4 rows in this table. Okay, within each row, then I use TDs to indicate the columns. Now D doesn't seem like it should indicate a column, but it stands for table data. Each time you put a TD in there, it will automatically create a column, and by default it distributes the columns to fit the space. So here we have the description is going to be in the first column, and the actual items description, which is dynamic because I'm using DTL variables here, it will list of course, the description for each item. You'll notice that there's no iteration, there's no loop here, because this is only the description, price, quantity, and category for a single item. Okay, so that's why there's no loop here, because we only have one item, so there's no reason to iterate. You'll also notice that I brought in the description into the H1 heading for the page, so it'll automatically dynamically change depending on which item I'm looking at. So it'll be fountain pen if I'm looking at fountain pens, or Moleskine notebooks if I'm looking at that. I also brought that into the title, so up in the tab of the browser window, it will also reflect the individual item's description, which I think is kind of a nice addition. For the product home table, now remember, for this one we're listing all of the products on the home page. We're iterating around and listing all of the items. We're listing the description along with their cost, and then whether or not they are in stock or out of stock. If there is a number or quantity value that is greater than 0, it will print the quantity on hand, and if the item is out of stock, it will simply print out of stock. Again, this is very, very similar to what we did in the DTL video. So if you want to go back and take a look at that, I use the exact same ideas here, so it would hopefully be a little bit easier for you. I would encourage you to practice this and try out some of your own ideas. This is a lot of fun. I find it a lot of fun. I would encourage you to try it and create your own databases, create your own templates, and then implement them using some DTL. Take care. We'll see you in class.